Okay, so I want you to picture this. It's January 4th, 2022. We're in Detroit. And it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right, so it's the dead of winter, it's dark, it's freezing cold, the streets are completely empty.
Exactly. And we're looking at this grainy black and white security camera feed. It's mounted on someone's house, pointed at a driveway. And what this camera catches isn't just a car pulling in. It's like watching the choreography of a crime.
It is, it's a very specific set of movements. A white sedan shows up, but the driver doesn't just, pull in nose first like you would coming home.
No.
He reverses in, he takes his time, angles the car just right so the trunk is facing the backyard.
Completely hidden from the street.
Completely hidden. And that move right there, that's what always gives me chills.
Yeah, that's not a normal move. That's tactical.
Oh.
It implies you thought this through. You don't hide your trunk at 1 in the morning unless you're planning on moving something you don't want anyone to see.
Precisely. It signals intent. And then you look at the timeline and the dread just sinks in. The car sits there for just a few minutes.
And then it's gone.
Drives off into the dark. But it comes back less than 10 minutes later. And when it returns, you can almost see the difference. The trunk is now empty.
And that footage, that single piece of footage, is the beginning and the end of the nightmare we're unpacking today. Because a couple of hours earlier, at 11:15 p.m., a 17-year-old girl named Zion Foster walked into that very house.
She walked in alive, still in her work uniform, completely trusting the person waiting for her inside.
But she never walked out.
Not on her own 2 feet anyway.
Today we're doing a deep dive into the disappearance and murder of Zion Foster. And this case, this one really rips away that feeling of safety you're supposed to have with family. This isn't a story about stranger danger.
No, not at all.
We're not talking about a random abduction. The man driving that white sedan, the person Zion walked into that house to see, was her cousin.
Her favorite cousin, Jaylen Brazier.
And that detail, that specific relationship, is what makes this so psychologically devastating.
It's everything. Today we're going to look at how that trust was, how it was weaponized. We're going to talk about what can only be described as a form of familial grooming.
And we also have to dissect the systemic failures here, specifically this runaway bias that basically gave a killer a head start.
But then on the other side, we'll see how incredible digital forensics, text messages, location pings, Google searches eventually spoke for Zion when she couldn't speak for herself.
We have a huge amount of material for this deep dive. We've got court transcripts, police interview logs, the digital forensic reports pulled straight from the cloud, and even the judge's sentencing remarks.
Our mission today is to really understand the anatomy of this betrayal. How does a favorite cousin become a killer? And how does a mother's intuition end up in a fight against a police department that just wants to, close a file?
It's a case study in how lies evolve under pressure.
Yeah.
Jaylen Brazier didn't just tell one lie. He built an entire false reality.
A reality that just crumbled under the weight of data. You have Life 360 pings, you have neighbor surveillance, you have Google searches.
Yeah.
It's a masterclass in how modern investigations work.
So let's start with Zion. Before we can understand the crime, we have to understand the person who was lost.
Zion Foster was 17 years old. She was a senior at East Detroit High School. And when you read through the family statements, the picture you get is of someone just vibrant.
Yeah.
Her mom, Sierra Milton, she describes her as having this undeniable spark, the kind of kid who just lights up a room, but she was also, a teenager.
Right. She was testing boundaries.
Exactly. Spirited, independent, and yes, admittedly a little bit rebellious at times.
And that part is really important context, not because it excuses anything, of course, but because it explains the friction at home and how that friction was later used against her.
Yes, the sources all mention she had a history of running away, but I think we need to be really careful with that term.
It feels very loaded, doesn't it?
It's deeply loaded. Because when you dig into it, Zion had left home twice in the past year. But what did that actually look like? She wasn't hitchhiking across the country.
She's going to her grandmother's house.
Or an aunt's house. She was removing herself from an argument with her mom about, rules, curfews, typical teenage stuff. It was a way to cool off, which is, that's pretty common for a teenager.
Right. It's seeking sanctuary with other family members. It's not disappearing into thin air. But that nuance was totally lost on the police.
Completely. When Sierra woke up on January 5th, the morning after Zion went to see Jaylen and realized her daughter's bed hadn't been slept in, the panic was instant. She went straight to the East Point police.
And that's where she hits this systemic wall.
A brick wall. The police reaction was just so dismissive, it bordered on negligent. There's a transcript of Sierra's conversation with the officer, and it's just heartbreaking to read. She's frantic. She knows something is wrong.
And what does he tell her?
He tells her, and this is a direct quote, "I'm going to be honest with you, we're taking this as she's a runaway."
We're taking this as she's a runaway. That sentence is basically a procedural stop sign, isn't it?
It's an investigative dead end. As soon as a missing teen is classified as a runaway, the entire sense of urgency just vanishes.
Because the assumption is that the absence is voluntary.
Exactly. It means no detectives are assigned right away. Nobody's pulling cell tower data. Nobody is organizing a search party. The official assumption is just, oh, she's mad at her mom, she's safe somewhere, and she'll come home when she gets hungry.
It effectively labeled Zion as the problem, not the victim. And it totally ignored the specific details of this disappearance.
Right. She hadn't stormed out of the house after a big fight. The night of January 4th was completely different.
She had just finished a shift at her job, the Detroit Wing Company.
She came home, and she actually asked her mom for permission to go hang out for a bit. She was totally transparent. She said, I'm going with Jaylen.
And her mom, Sierra, she trusted Jaylen. This wasn't some new boyfriend she'd never met.
Not at all. Sierra had seen Jaylen pick Zion up from their house, from their own driveway, maybe twice a month for the last year. They were close. He was the cool older cousin.
She would wave at him from the door.
Can you imagine that visual of a mother waving goodbye to the man who is about to murder her child? It's just devastating.
And there was a digital trail right from the very beginning. We know Zion texted her boyfriend, Vertez Gonzalez, at midnight.
Yep, just 3 words.
On my way.
On my way. Which could mean a couple things, right? I'm leaving now on my way home, or I'm on my way to you.
But either way, it implies she was about to be on the move. And after that text, nothing.
Total digital silence. No more outgoing messages. Any calls made to her phone went straight to voicemail. That sharp, sudden cutoff is almost always the first sign that something has gone terribly wrong.
Okay, so let's move to the morning of January 5th. Zion's not home. Her phone is off. Her boyfriend, Vertez, he's the first one to really sound the alarm. He texts Sierra at 8 a.m.
The texts are just pure panic. Are you alive? And then, this is the worst thing ever. He already knew. He felt that break in the pattern.
So Sierra, who is now absolutely terrified, does the only logical thing. She calls the last person her daughter was with. She calls Jaylen.
And this brings us to that initial confrontation, because Jaylen's response is not what you would expect from a concerned cousin. He doesn't say, oh yeah, I dropped her off around 1 a.m.
No, he goes for what you can only call the big lie.
It is audacious. He answers the phone, and he tells Sierra, his own aunt, that he hasn't seen or spoken to Zion in 3 years.
3 years.
Since May of 2021, he claims.
That is gaslighting on an epic scale.
Oh.
Sierra literally saw him in her driveway a few weeks ago.
It's a strategy. It's called denial of reality. He's banking on his own confidence, his absolute certainty, to make her question her own memory. He basically tells her, you don't know what you're talking about.
And he builds on it. He constructs this whole narrative.
He does. He says, Zion is sneaky. She uses my name as a cover story to go see boys in my neighborhood. She's just saying she's with me, so you'll let her go out.
He's weaponizing that troubled teen narrative against her own mother. He knows Zion has a history of bending the rules, so he uses that to make his lie sound plausible.
It's incredibly manipulative. He's saying, your daughter is the liar here, and you're a fool for believing her. He's trying to create confusion, to sow doubt, to buy himself time.
And he even had an explanation ready for the denial evidence, because Zion's boyfriend, Vertez, he had Life 360 on his phone.
Right, the location sharing app. For anyone who doesn't use it, it's a family safety app that uses GPS, and it's usually frighteningly accurate.
So Vertez had a screenshot.
Yes, from 11:24 p.m., the night she vanished. It shows Zion's location pin directly across the street from Jaylen's house.
So the I haven't seen her in 3 years lie is just objectively scientifically false. The satellites don't lie.
You would think so. But Jaylen had a spin for that too. When the police confronted him with that location data, he just doubled down.
What did he say?
He said, see, I told you. She's near my house, but she's not at my house. She's probably across the street with some guy, using my address as an alibi.
And because the police were already predisposed to see her as a runaway.
They bought it. Or at least they accepted it as a plausible explanation. They went to his house, he was totally cooperative, invited them inside, played the part of the frustrated but concerned cousin, and they left.
He even offered up his own Ring camera footage, didn't he?
He did, which seems like a confident move for a guilty person. But there was a catch.
Her mom, Sierra, noticed it right away.
She did. When she was allowed to view it, she saw that the timeline was like Swiss cheese. There were huge gaps, deletions, and they were specifically on the night of January 4th.
But without a warrant, without any other evidence of a crime, I mean, at this point, there's no body, no blood. The police couldn't prove those deletions were malicious.
Right, and this is the point where the investigation could have just stalled out and died, if not for one simple fact of modern life.
The surveillance state we all live in.
Exactly. Jaylen could control his own Ring camera. He could delete his own files, but he couldn't delete his neighbors.
And that was the breakthrough. Police eventually canvassed the neighborhood and pull footage from a security camera across the street.
And it just instantly destroys Jaylen's entire story.
What did it show?
At 11:15 p.m. on January 4th, it shows a white sedan pulling up. 2 people get out. One is clearly Jaylen. The other is a young woman matching Zion's description.
And they checked the alibis, right? It couldn't have been his girlfriend.
Correct. We know his girlfriend, Katrina Smith, was working the midnight shift at a manufacturing plant. She clocked in at 11:00 p.m. So the woman walking into that house with Jaylen was not her.
It was Zion. The visual evidence matched the Life 360 data. Jaylen was caught in a massive lie.
And that's not all the camera caught. It also captured the trunk maneuver we talked about at the start.
The backing in at 1 a.m.
The trunk facing the backyard. The short trip away from the house toward Highland Park. The return, just minutes later, with an empty trunk. That sequence of events is the visual signature of someone disposing of a body.
So now, armed with this video, the police finally have to take this seriously. They escalate.
They come back to the house, this time with a canine unit.
And the dogs, as they say, don't lie.
They don't. They went straight to the trunk of that white sedan. The dogs gave a positive indication for the specific scent of human decomposition.
Cadaver dogs.
Cadaver dogs.
So at this point, Jaylen is completely cornered. The I haven't seen her story is dead. The runaway story is dead. He has video placing her at his house, and he has dogs indicating death in his car.
So he pivots. It's a calculated retreat. On January 19th, about 2 weeks after she disappeared, he agrees to another police interview. This time, he brings a friend who's a lawyer.
And the story changes completely.
It changes from, I don't know anything, to, okay, something happened, but it was a tragic accident.
Walk us through this new version of events.
He claims they were just hanging out in his basement. He says they were smoking some marijuana. Then, he says, Zion fell asleep on the couch.
Okay.
He claims he went upstairs for maybe 15 or 20 minutes to get a drink or something, and when he came back down, she was just gone.
Gone as in dead.
Yes. He says he tried to wake her up. She was unresponsive. He says he checked for a pulse in her neck and couldn't find one. He says she wasn't breathing.
Stop right there. If you're an innocent person and your 17-year-old cousin stops breathing in your basement, what is the first thing you do?
You call 911, you scream for help, you start CPR, you do something.
A rational, innocent person does that, yes. What does Jaylen claim he did?
He claims he panicked. He told the detectives, quote, I feared it would look like I killed her.
So his response to not wanting to look like a killer
Was to do exactly what a killer would do. He says his panic response was to pick up her body, carry it out to his car, put her in the trunk, drive to a dumpster in Highland Park, and throw her inside a trash receptacle.
The logic is just so incredibly twisted. I didn't want it to look like I murdered her, so I secretly disposed of her body in a dumpster in the middle of the night.
It's twisted, but from a legal standpoint, it's a strategic move.
How so?
By admitting to the disposal, he explains away the neighbor's video and the cadaver dog hit. He gives them an explanation for that evidence. But by claiming she died naturally, maybe from the marijuana or some unknown medical issue, he's trying to avoid a murder charge.
Because without a body,
Without a body, the medical examiner can't determine a cause of death. They can't prove strangulation. They can't prove she was shot or stabbed. He's gambling that if they can't find Zion's body, they can't prove he's the one who killed her.
he's betting on her staying lost forever.
Exactly. And that confession, that single statement, it triggered one of the largest and most heartbreaking search efforts in Detroit's recent history.
The landfill search. Read the reports on this.
Yeah.
And the scale is just mind-boggling.
It was a massive operation. It was planned for 8 weeks, but it ended up extending to nearly 6 months.
And they knew where to look.
They did. They were able to trace the garbage collection routes from that specific dumpster in Highland Park to a specific section of a specific landfill. But you have to understand, we're talking about weeks of compacted municipal waste from a major American city.
And the conditions for the searchers, just awful.
Unimaginable. You have teams in full hazmat suits using heavy machinery to move literal mountains of trash. Then you have dozens of volunteers and officers on the ground sifting through all of that compacted sludge by hand.
Looking for what? A piece of clothing? A bone fragment?
Anything, any sign of her.
And after all that effort, 6 months of searching.
They found nothing. Zion's body was never recovered.
So initially, Jaylen's gamble worked.
It did. Because there was no body, the prosecutor's office felt they couldn't bring a murder charge at that time. They couldn't prove how she died. So he was arrested and charged with a much lesser crime, lying to a peace officer.
He got a sentence of, what, 23 months? Less than 2 years for admitting he threw his cousin in a dumpster.
It was essentially a legal placeholder. Everyone involved knew it wasn't justice, but it was the only charge they felt they could prove at that moment. But this is where the deep dive gets really interesting, because it gets into the psychology of guilt.
Jaylen goes to prison for lying.
And while he's in there, he gets a little too comfortable. He starts making phone calls.
The prison wiretaps.
Yes, all the calls are recorded. And he's talking to his girlfriend, Katrina, and you can hear in his voice, he's not acting like a man who is grieving a tragic accident. He's acting like a man who is monitoring a cover-up.
He was using code, wasn't he?
He was. He kept referring to the landfill search as the CO thing. He would ask Katrina over and over, is there any major news? You hear anything about the CO thing?
And when she told him no, that they hadn't found anything.
You can hear the relief in his voice, and that right there, that is the key.
Explain that.
If his story was true, if Zion really had died of a sudden seizure or an overdose in his basement, then finding her body would be his ticket to freedom.
An autopsy would prove it.
An autopsy would show no signs of trauma. It would prove his innocence on the murder charge. He should have been praying every single day that they found her.
Instead, he was relieved that she remained lost.
Because he knew exactly what an autopsy would reveal. He knew her body carried the evidence of what he did to her.
So he serves his time for the lying charge. He actually gets released a bit early through a boot camp program. For a moment, he's a free man.
For a very brief moment. Because while he was serving that sentence, the police and the prosecutor's office, they never stopped working. They were building the murder case in the background.
And in June of 2023, almost immediately after he was released, he was arrested again.
This time for second-degree murder.
But they still didn't have the body. So what changed? What was the new evidence that gave them the confidence to finally charge him with murder?
The digital forensics team had finally cracked his cloud data. See, Jaylen had been clever enough to do a factory reset on his phone just days after the murder. He wiped the physical device clean.
But he forgot about the backup.
He forgot that the cloud is the silent witness that never, ever forgets. And his search history, backed up to the cloud, was absolutely damning.
On January 7th, just 3 days after he dumped Zion's body, he wasn't Googling how to explain a tragic accident or grief counseling.
Not even close.
What was he searching for?
Are garbage trucks also crushers?
Wow.
What is the force of the machinery?
Oh, my God.
And then, how do police get your phone history? And how do you know if police are watching you?
Are garbage trucks also crushers? It's just grotesque. That's not panic.
It's the search history of someone who wants to be sure that the evidence of their crime is being utterly and permanently destroyed. It shows a cold, calculated effort to make sure Zion was never found. It completely obliterates his panic defense.
And that wasn't all they found in the cloud, was it?
No. Then there were the text messages. The prosecutors recovered over 4,000 messages exchanged between Jaylen and Zion.
And this is where we finally get to the motive. This is where the whole favorite cousin narrative just takes this incredibly dark turn into grooming.
The prosecutor described Jaylen's behavior in these texts as pervasive. And you have to remember the age difference. He was 23, she was 17. He was systematically isolating her from her family.
What kind of things was he saying in the messages?
He had this bizarre god complex. In some texts, he literally refers to himself as a god. He would brag that he could have any woman he wanted. The tone was often sexually probing.
He was trying to manipulate her perception of him.
Constantly. He would tell her that his own girlfriend, Katrina, was jealous of her, trying to create this us-against-the-world dynamic. He was trying to build himself up in her eyes.
He was positioning himself as her only true ally, her sanctuary.
Exactly. He explicitly offered his basement as a hideout for her if she ever wanted to run away from her mom for real. He gave her advice on how to evade the police if she did. He was actively driving a wedge between Zion and Sierra, trying to make himself the only person in the world that she felt she could trust.
That is classic grooming behavior.
Yeah.
You isolate the victim from their support network until you're the only one left.
So when Zion walked into that house on January 4th, she wasn't just going to hang out with her cousin. She was walking into a trap that had been carefully set for months by someone she had been manipulated into trusting completely.
And that betrayal, that's the real heart of this tragedy. This wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't a snap decision. It was the culmination of a long, deliberate campaign of manipulation.
It was. So we finally get to the trial in May of 2024. Jaylen is facing second-degree murder. He chooses not to testify. But his defense team, they have a new strategy.
They pivot back to the medical explanation.
They do. Specifically, they introduce the seizure defense. They argue that Zion must have had some undiagnosed medical condition that caused seizures and that she suffered a fatal one on his couch that night.
Was there any medical evidence at all to support this?
Virtually none. Her official medical records were presented in court. They showed she had asthma. That's it.
Her mother, Sierra, testified.
She did. She was adamant. She said Zion had never had a seizure a single day in her life. The only person who ever mentioned seizures was her boyfriend, Vertez.
Right. He said on the stand that Zion had told him she had them.
Which, knowing teenagers, that can mean anything. It could be an exaggeration. It could be her way of describing fainting spells. It could have just been something she said to get sympathy. It wasn't a medical diagnosis.
And in a court of law, you need medical proof, not hearsay.
Exactly. The prosecution brought in forensic anthropologists and medical doctors who testified that the only chronic condition she had was asthma. And they made a crucial point about that.
Which was?
An asthma death is not a silent death. Jaylen's story was that she just quietly slumped over and her heart stopped.
But that's not how an asthma attack works.
Not at all. A fatal asthma attack is a violent, desperate struggle for air. It involves wheezing, gasping, panic clutching at your throat. You don't just quietly drift off to sleep and die from asthma. His description of her death was completely inconsistent with her known medical history.
And then there was the physical evidence. The evidence on Jaylen's own body. The scratch.
This was a huge moment in the trial. Katrina, his girlfriend, she took the stand.
And just to remind everyone, she was pregnant and at work on the night of the murder.
Right. And she testifies that when Jaylen finally came to pick her up from work at 3 a.m. after he was done at the dumpster, she noticed something. A deep scratch on his collarbone.
A scratch deep enough that it had bled.
And it was fresh. When she asked him about it, what did he say?
He blamed the cat. The classic, the cat did it.
But Katrina testified that their cat had never, ever scratched him like that before. And the prosecution argued, looking at the placement and the depth of it, that it was a defensive wound.
That scratch tells a story. It tells you that Zion wasn't peacefully asleep on a couch.
She was fighting back.
It completely contradicts the silent death narrative. It proves there was a physical struggle. That scratch is the ghost of Zion fighting for her life.
And the prosecution used Katrina's testimony to paint a picture of Jaylen's character, too. They pointed to the timeline. While he was supposedly in a state of panic over his cousin's sudden death, what was he really doing?
This part is just chilling. Katrina was at work. She's pregnant with their third child, and she's sick.
She was texting him at 1 a.m., right around the time he was backing the car into the driveway. She's telling him she feels nauseous, she's having hot and cold flashes, she wants to come home from her shift.
And his response?
He texts her back, "You can make it, baby."
You can make it, because he was busy.
He was busy getting rid of a body. He left his sick, pregnant girlfriend to suffer at work because he had to finish the job of hiding Zion. It just shows a complete and total lack of empathy for anyone or anything but himself and his own preservation.
The jury saw through all of it.
They did. They went out to deliberate, and they came back in only 30 minutes.
30 minutes. That is unbelievably fast for a murder trial, especially one where there's no body.
It speaks to the overwhelming weight of the circumstantial evidence. The jury looked at the initial lie, the trunk footage, the Google searches about garbage crushers, the grooming texts, the scratch, and the picture was just undeniable.
There was no reasonable doubt.
None. They found him guilty of second-degree murder and tampering with evidence.
And at the sentencing, the judge, Donald Knapp, he did not hold back.
No, he did not. Judge Knapp delivered an absolutely scathing assessment of Jaylen's character. He pointed out that Jaylen left his own 2 small children, a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, alone in the house while he drove off to dump Zion's body.
He just left them there.
He highlighted the God complex from the texts, the manipulation, the complete lack of remorse. It was a total condemnation.
And the final sentence.
The judge gave him 30 to 90 years for the murder, plus another 5 to 10 years for tampering with evidence. And crucially, he ordered those sentences to be served consecutively.
So one after the other. He has to finish the first sentence before he can even start the second.
Correct. It means he's looking at a minimum of 35 years in prison before he can even be considered for parole. He went into prison a young man. If he ever gets out, he will be a very old one.
Zion's mom, Sierra Milton, finally got her chance to speak directly to him in court.
And her statement was so powerful. She just looked at him and said, "You thought you were smart. The people saw you for what you are."
It must have been such a moment of vindication for her.
It was. She said later that she felt relief, that the court finally recognized that Zion was loved, that she was fought for. Even without finding her body, the legal system affirmed that her life mattered and that her killer would be held accountable.
But that's the really bittersweet part of this, isn't
Yeah.
it? Legal justice is not the same thing as closure. Zion is still out there somewhere.
That's the tragedy that just lingers over this entire case. Sierra Milton doesn't have a grave to visit. She can't lay flowers for her daughter. Zion rests in a landfill. The closure is on paper, in a courthouse. But that emotional wound of not being able to bring her home, that will never heal.
You know, as we wrap this up, my mind just keeps going back to the beginning. To that phrase, favorite cousin. We spend so much time and energy teaching our kids about stranger danger. You know, watch out for the person in the van, don't talk to the man at the park. But the statistics have always shown that the real danger is usually much, much closer to home.
That's the hardest lesson from a case like this. Predatory behavior doesn't always look like a villain from a movie. Sometimes it looks like the cool older cousin who buys you chicken wings and listens to you complain about your mom. Jaylen used his position of trust and the access that being family gave him to isolate and groom Zion right under her mother's nose.
And I can't shake the runaway classification, that initial police response. If they had taken Sierra seriously on January 5th,
If they had pulled that neighbor's security footage that same morning instead of waiting for weeks, they might have found Zion before the garbage trucks made their round.
they might have recovered her body.
They might have. That bias, that automatic assumption that a black teenage girl who is missing is just acting out, it cost this family the basic human dignity of a proper burial.
It's just such a stark reminder that the system has to learn to listen to parents. When a mother says, "I know my child," and something is terribly wrong, that intuition needs to override any statistical probability of a runaway.
Absolutely. We have to look deeper. We have to challenge those initial labels.
This has been a really heavy deep dive, but I think a necessary one. We've unpacked the anatomy of a betrayal, the power of digital forensics, and a mother's incredible fight for justice for Zion Foster.
And if there is one single takeaway from all of this, it's that the truth is incredibly hard to delete. Whether it's on a neighbor's camera, a cloud backup, or in a scratch on a killer's collarbone, the evidence eventually speaks for the victim.
Thank you for listening. Stay safe, trust your gut, and please look out for each other. We'll see you on the next